Hi, I'm Faye from Guitarzone and we're here with Lloyd and Miles from Clark Guitars. We're just going to ask a few questions. So, how long does it take to make a Clark guitar?
Oh, you can have that one.
Okay, around about 6 weeks. We can push a guitar through quicker than that. If you said how long does it take from the time that we receive the timber or the time that timber's cut, that can be 2 years through all the processes. But once we've got all the components together and the timber's cut to size, 4 to 6 weeks, that sort of time.
How do you decide what timbers to use?
Lots of experimenting, always coming up with different combinations and different timbers that are available. I'm always coming up with things and throwing at Lloyd, and Lloyd's throwing them back.
It's trial and error, and it's also what's available at the time and what's replenishable. We're a sustainable guitar company for the most part. We try to be really sustainable. So the actual environment has some bearing on that, and where we live, of course, has a lot of bearing on that. Hence, all the Australian timbers.
Do you find that draws people to the brand, that it's sustainable timbers?
It's an important thing now, and it's growing more and more important. There's a lot of traditional tone woods that are becoming scarce and harder to find, and we need to protect that for our grandchildren and their grandchildren. And there's so many timbers that are not yet tested as tone woods, so we get to fool around with all that stuff. It's part of what Clark is that we get to experiment and be a bit silly.
Really, about 90+% of our timbers we use are sustainable. It's very important, thing, because in 5-10 years' time, spruce that most people use, rosewood that most people use, it's not going to be available. Or it'll be very different. There'll be 3-piece spruce tops. There'll be a very different look and feel from guitars, just because of the resources are running out.
And how did you develop the 3-way pickup system? How did that come about?
Do you want to?
Yeah, the reality was it was a very organic thing. It all came from strumming a guitar and deciding that's how it should sound, but louder. And that's kind of this, it's this mantra that I'm constantly saying to people, is that's what an acoustic guitar should sound like, as it is now, but louder. And so I think that the idea was certainly from trying to find something natural. Certainly the PA system, the idea that there were 3 speakers that were hearing different frequencies, was a huge influence on that decision to kind of match that PA with the pickup. And it started as a 2-way, and for the first 10 years that's what was used in all guitars. Adding the condenser microphone was a very small difference, but a huge leap for the tone of the instrument. And it's just that quest for perfection. You've got the 2 elements that are working really well together. There's that one thing, that high end, that high pitch that was still frustrating everyone at the company. So that became the mission. If you're on a constant quest to improve your instrument, then we were always going to find our way there. Since Miles has been CEO, there's been a lot of changes to the guitar that's improved the instrument again. So yeah, the 3-way, I think, not that I designed it, and I would dare say I had nothing to do with it, other than strumming it and saying I liked it, I didn't like it. But it comes down to that quest to have a pickup system that sounds just like microphones in front of an instrument.
Yeah. How else have the guitars changed since the start of Clark?
When they first started, the tops were much thicker. We did a major change to the bracing in 2009, where we thinned the top out and we thinned the bracing out. In 2013 we put a little patch behind the bridge so that soft timbers would be more stable in that area. We've changed the output jack recently, so with a lot of different bracing in that. There's a new 2-way pickup coming at some point. There's evolution all the time, just little changes, and all those tiny little changes add up to big changes.
And do you find it's easy to make those changes being like a newer company?
I often say that it's because of where we are, we're allowed to do things. there's a lot of traditional companies out there which have got fantastic heritages lasting, in some cases, hundreds of years. But the public sees those as uncompromising positions, that if those companies try to change something, it is just not allowed. People are up in arms, whereas we're a brand new company where we can say, gee, we're going to have a redwood top guitar and we're going to have sapwood in it, because the sapwood looks great and it still sounds great and it's just as stable as the normal timber and it just looks great. Whereas if some of those other companies put sapwood on the top, people would say, you're not allowed to do that, kind of thing.
And not being bound by legacy is kind of cool, because we get to create our legacy slowly and watch it grow. You know, I'm often on the Facebook page watching and I'll, you know, looking at some of the old pictures that people put up and seeing how it's all changed, and it's and that's becoming our legacy, is that people want to take that journey with us. It's been really cool. People are sort of buying a new Cole Clark every few years as we improve them, and they want to be part of that, and it's been a great joy actually, and it's that, you know, that drive to make better guitars constantly that probably keeps us going. You know, it's a labour of love making guitars in Australia. It's hard to do it. Manufacturing in Australia is hard. I think what keeps us going is that they're getting so much better all the time, and it's exciting. And the more we improve them, the more happy we are to hand them over to people.
Yeah.
You know?
And how do you get artists on board with Cole Clark? Do you find that they approach you, or do you?
It's usually an organic thing. You know, we rarely approach artists. I think very, very rarely. I think
Almost never.
Really almost never. Obviously, if we happen to come across those people, we'll welcome them to the factory and tell them they're welcome to have a look around. But we've never actually hunted them down. In a lot of cases, the artists that you see playing Cole Clarks, the top artists that you see on TV with Cole Clarks have bought theirs. And, you know, because they love them. I think it's important for us that, being a small company that sells every guitar we make, so we can't really give guitars to people often. And
except unless it's you.
So I get a lot of free guitars, but I'm the tester, you see, and I need to test certain guitars as I see them coming through the factory. And I think they look very nice, but it's best I test them. You know, no, I think with the artists, I think it has to be players that genuinely love the guitar. You know, we've never been that company that just hands guitars to people saying, just play that on TV. We want people just to really love them. So the artists that play them, they're actually die-hard Cole Clark fans. As it turns out, they're also world-famous pop stars, and that's just been a bonus. But there's a lot of people like them. They're just who are every bit as die-hard. They're just not celebrities, you know.
And last question: which Cole Clark guitars are your favourites?
I've always been a Bunya Maple FL2 guy. I've got a signature guitar with the company, and that's the timber combination. More recently though, since the Redwoods come out, I fully acknowledge, and I'm doing it on camera, Miles, so it's official, that the Redwood top guitars are the best sounding Cole Clarks we've ever made. So I've actually recently switched to using a Redwood top on stage. So, you know, but it's horses for courses too. There's certain things that the Redwood I prefer on the Redwood, and there's certain things I prefer on the Bunya, depending on the kind of show I'm doing. But certainly for my solo shows now, the Redwood FL2 is winning out every time.
And the guitar I have in my lounge room is a Redwood with rosewood back and sides. It's just a great lounge room guitar, huge sound, great bottom end, great top end. For what Lloyd does, you wouldn't use rosewood back and sides on a stage guitar.
No, and because, you know, and each guitar, even if they're built from the same tree, they'll be different, and they'll feel different, they'll sound different. And that's the beauty of having hands-on workers making guitars. You know, is that there's a lot of love that goes into it, and that is an essential ingredient in making them. So, you know, for me, it's not about so much the timber combination, although that's important. It's been about finding that one that just sits perfectly with me, and I'll quite often, when I'm looking for a new guitar at Cole Clark, will just play a few until one just sits just right, and you know that's yours.
And my guitars never sound as good as his, unless he's playing my guitar.
I didn't know you had one at home. I didn't know you got free guitars also.
I bought it.
God.
I did.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.